The water ran warm over my shoulders, steam filling the bathroom and blurring the glass of the shower door. I closed my eyes, letting the spray numb me from another long, predictable day. Married life had become routine. Wake up, work, dinner with Sophia if she wasn't staying late again, then bed. It wasn't bad, not unhappy exactly, but it lacked something I couldn't quite name anymore. Love was still there, buried beneath the schedules and obligations, but the spark we once had faded into something quiet, distant. I told myself I was fine with it, that marriage was supposed to change with time. Still, the silence in our home often pressed against me, filling the spaces Sophia left when she rushed off to her office or collapsed on the couch too exhausted to talk. That silence became louder when Ryan came around, because with him, it was never silent. Ryan had been my best friend since college, loud, charming, and confident where I was reserved. He had this way of making any room feel alive just by being in it. He and Sophia got along too, but it was always me he came for. We had years of inside jokes, late-night talks, and moments that had built a friendship I thought was unshakable. He knew me better than most, sometimes better than I wanted. That afternoon I hadn't expected anyone. Sophia had texted that she'd be late again. I took it as my chance to let the hot water wash over me longer than usual, to let myself drift without responsibility or conversation. My head tilted back against the tiled wall. I barely heard the creak of the front door opening. At first I thought I imagined it, some echo in the pipes, but then I caught the muffled sound of footsteps across the hardwood floor. My heart kicked, sudden and sharp. I hadn't locked the door. Why would I in the middle of the day? For a second I thought maybe Sophia had come home after all, but it wasn't her voice I heard when someone called out, "Ethan?" "Ryan." I didn't answer immediately, fumbling with whether to shout back or stay silent. My mouth was half open when the bathroom door cracked open. Through the fogged glass I saw his outline, a tall, familiar shape frozen in the doorway. "Dude, His voice stumbled into silence as I jerked toward the glass, one hand instinctively covering myself, though he couldn't really see me through the steam. "What the hell, Ryan?" I barked, more out of shock than anger. "Sorry, man. I thought you weren't answering. I thought you were downstairs." His words tumbled out too fast, his tone both apologetic and something else. I caught his reflection in the fogged mirror as he hesitated, not retreating as quickly as I expected. For a second his eyes lingered, and I knew he wasn't just shocked. He was looking. The realization sent heat through me that had nothing to do with the water. My pulse thundered in my ears, and suddenly the shower felt too small, too vulnerable. Yet I couldn't bring myself to yell again, couldn't force him out. Instead I muttered, "Could you at least close the door?" He blinked, as if shaken from a trance, then nodded and pulled it shut behind him. But that image of him standing there, caught in the steam with his gaze locked on me, burned into my mind like fire on paper. I leaned against the tile, chest rising and falling hard. It had been seconds, maybe less, but the weight of it clung to me. Ryan wasn't supposed to look at me like that. I wasn't supposed to notice. And yet, in that fleeting instant, I had felt something spark alive inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. By the time I stepped out of the shower, towel slung around my waist, my mind was a storm. I half expected him to be gone, embarrassed enough to leave without explanation. But he wasn't. He was sitting casually at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He looked up when I entered, gave me a grin that felt a little too knowing. "You should lock your doors," he teased lightly. "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh, but the air between us had shifted. It was thicker, charged, a silence buzzing underneath the casual words. I could feel his eyes flicker toward me again, quick but deliberate, and I felt my skin heat where his gaze touched. We talked about nothing after that. The game on TV, some story from work, but I couldn't focus. Every word felt like a cover for what had just happened. Every laugh carried an edge of tension. By the time Sophia came home hours later, I still hadn't shaken the feeling of his eyes on me, the memory of that brief moment in the doorway. That night, lying beside my wife as she scrolled through her emails, my mind drifted back to the bathroom, to the way Ryan had looked at me, to how I hadn't wanted to stop him, and I knew deep down, that something had shifted in a way that could never be undone. The days after that moment felt different, though nothing outward had changed. Sophia still rushed to and from work, barely noticing how distracted I had become. Ryan still dropped by as often as he always did, joking, stealing beers from the fridge, filling the house with his easy energy. But beneath all of it was something unspoken, an electricity that buzzed quietly between us, impossible to ignore. I told myself it had been nothing, just an awkward accident. Friends walked in on each other sometimes. It didn't have to mean more. But every time Ryan's eyes flickered to mine, I felt the weight of that second in the bathroom door. His smile lingered too long. His hand brushed mine when we sat too close on the couch. His jokes had an edge that made me wonder if I was hearing them right. One night he came over with a six-pack, claiming he didn't feel like drinking alone. Sophia was out late again, stuck in a meeting that bled into another. The kitchen light was dim, the air heavy with the smell of beer and the faint smoke he always carried with him. We sat side by side, the conversation flowing like it always did. But beneath it, I felt the tension growing, coiling tighter with every laugh, every glance. "You've been quiet lately," he said after a while, tipping his head to study me. "Something on your mind?" I shrugged, taking a drink, trying to appear casual. "Just work, life, you know." He leaned in, his voice dropping lower, softer. "It's not about that day, is it?" The words froze me. I hadn't expected him to bring it up, not so directly. My throat tightened. "What day?" I asked, though we both knew what he meant. "The shower," he said simply. He didn't smile this time. His eyes held mine, steady and deliberate. I set the bottle down too quickly, the glass clinking against the counter. It was nothing. "You walked in, that's all. Was it nothing?" His voice was calm, almost challenging. I couldn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy, until he leaned back slightly, a smirk tugging at his lips as if he'd already read my thoughts. "You didn't want me to leave," my pulse hammered. He wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud made the guilt twist deeper. I should have been furious, should have drawn a line. Instead, I felt something inside me unravel, giving way to the truth I'd been fighting since that day. "Ryan." I started, but the rest of the words wouldn't come. He reached out then, his hand brushing mine, deliberate this time. My skin tingled where his fingers lingered, and the small contact felt louder than anything either of us could say. My breath caught, but I didn't pull away. "I've wanted to tell you for years," he said quietly, his usual bravado gone. "I've wanted you for years." The room felt like it shrank around us. My chest tightened, torn between loyalty and the ache of finally feeling seen, desired. "I'm married," I whispered, the words sounding hollow even to me. "I know," he said. "But that doesn't change what's real." Before I could stop him, he leaned closer. His lips brushed mine, soft, testing. My body stiffened, every alarm in my mind blaring at once. And yet, beneath the panic, there was relief, like something I'd buried deep inside me had finally been unearthed. I should have pulled back. I should have said no. Instead, I kissed him back. The kiss was hesitant at first, both of us teetering on the edge of fear, but it grew quickly, hunger breaking through restraint. My hand found his shoulder, his fingers slid into my hair, and years of friendship melted into something far more dangerous. Every line I had promised not to cross blurred into nothing. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathing hard, the weight of what we'd done sank in. His forehead rested against mine, his eyes closed. "I've waited so long for that," he murmured. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Guilt clawed at me, images of Sophia flashing in my mind, but the truth pressed even harder. I hadn't felt this alive in years. We didn't talk about it after that, not in words. But the silence between us was louder than any confession. The touches became more frequent, the looks more intense. One evening bled into another until finally, it happened again. This time not just a kiss, but something deeper. Something I couldn't excuse as an accident. And when I woke the next morning, tangled in sheets that weren't mine, Ryan beside me, I knew there was no going back. I had crossed the line, and as much as it terrified me, part of me didn't want to turn around. The morning light cut through the blinds, sharp and unforgiving. I stared at the ceiling. the sound of Ryan's steady breathing beside me both calming and suffocating. His arm was draped across my chest as if it had always belonged there, as if this was where he'd always meant to be. A part of me wanted to stay frozen in that moment, to believe it could be that simple. But reality crashed in quick and brutal. Sophia, my wife, waiting at home, trusting me. I slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and stood in the quiet of his apartment. My clothes from the night before were scattered on the floor, an unspoken testimony of everything I had done. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, eyes wide, hair messy, lips still swollen from his kisses. I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. Ryan stirred, his voice low and rough with sleep. "You're not sneaking out, are you?" I froze, caught. He sat up, stretching, the sheets falling loosely around his waist. There was no shame in his eyes, no hesitation. "Only certainty. I have to get home," I muttered, fumbling with my shirt. "Home to what?" he asked softly, the question striking deeper than he intended. I turned to him, guilt spilling over. "To my wife, to my life, to the promises I made." He didn't argue. He just looked at me, his expression a mix of sadness and something stubborn, something unwavering. "You can lie to her, Ethan, but don't lie to yourself. Last night wasn't a mistake. You know it." The truth of it hit me like a weight I couldn't shake. He was right. I couldn't call it a mistake. I didn't regret it. And that terrified me more than anything. The days that followed were a blur of double lives. At home, I played the part of the husband, nodding at Sophia's work stories, eating dinner in silence, pretending everything was fine. But my mind drifted constantly, back to Ryan's touch, his laugh, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. Every message from him, every accidental brush of his hand when we were together, lit a fire in me I couldn't extinguish. But with every stolen moment came the fear of discovery. Sophia grew suspicious at times, her eyes narrowing when I came home late or when I seemed distracted. "Everything okay with you?" she asked one night, her tone sharper than casual. "Yeah," I lied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." The guilt gnawed at me, but even as I promised myself I'd end it, I couldn't stay away. Ryan pulled me in like gravity, and I was too weak to resist. Each secret meeting only deepened the bond between us, until it wasn't just lust anymore, it was love, raw and undeniable. One night, after we'd been together, he pressed his forehead to mine and whispered, "Leave with me." "We don't have to keep hiding." The word shook me. My chest ached with the weight of the decision he was asking me to make. I pictured Sophia's face, the woman I had built a life with, the vows we had exchanged. And then I pictured Ryan, the man who made me feel alive, who looked at me like I was more than just routine. "I can't," I whispered back, my throat tight, his jaw clenched. But he didn't push. "One day you'll have to choose, and I hope you'll be honest with yourself when you do." That night, lying in bed beside Sophia, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Her hand rested lightly on my arm, a gesture of love that should have grounded me, but instead, it made me feel like an imposter. I was trapped between two lives, two truths that couldn't exist together. Maybe one day I'd confess, tear everything apart, and start again with Ryan. Maybe I'd bury this secret deep enough that Sophia would never know. Or maybe the weight of it would destroy me before either of them did. As I closed my eyes, Ryan's words echoed in my head, mixing with the memory of that first accidental glance in the bathroom. The day he walked in on me in the shower, I thought it was just an awkward accident, a moment we'd both laugh off and forget. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of something I could never take back, the moment that cracked open the life I thought I knew. And as much as I tried to fight it, part of me knew. I didn't want to forget.